tonight is Emma Kent, who is a local historian and a storyteller, and she's also a graduate of Carleton University with a BA in history. And I'm pretty sure I've seen Emma around when I'm doing my walking tours, because she's been doing a lot of walking tours of her own of downtown Ottawa. So that's how she communicates her passion for Ottawa's history with the people. If you get a chance, go to her website. I found it quite interesting. She's, in addition to her history, she's a creator of an interesting webcomic that I think I'm going to bring up here called #LD. You'll understand what the LD is when you get there, but it's a web comic where she takes a look at, well, I'll give it away there, with learning to live with disabilities. I found it quite interesting. But our focus tonight is going to be on Emma's passion for history and the fact that she's been a Girl Guide and a leader with the Girl Guides for a long time. And she's going to talk tonight about her memories of Camp Woolsey, which is located about 40 kilometers northwest of Ottawa. That's our topic tonight. So everyone, would you please welcome our guest speaker for tonight, Emma Kent.
Thank you so much. I'm blown away by the amount of support and the amount of people that showed up. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. So I'm just gonna share my screen. Oh look, the spoilers.
Emma Kent. Yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. So at the end, feel free to ask questions. For those who are not familiar with Zoom, they have this handy chat option. You can message people privately, and feel free to share your memories and connect with camp people. The best thing about camp is the people in the community around it. So really try and make use of that throughout the meeting.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I forgot, and I just want to add, I'll be monitoring the chat. So yeah, don't hesitate to write down some questions, please. Thank you.
Awesome. So the Girl Guides of Ottawa are about to enter a new era of camping. And in the process, we have to say goodbye to our camp that we bought more than 80 years ago through fundraising. Well, it's so incredibly hard to say goodbye to Woolsey. I want to take the time to thank it for the memories and the second family it provided to so many. It officially closed last year on Halloween and has since been listed for sale. So these are actually all photos of me at camp. And Woolsey has always been a huge part of my life. At camp, I got to be all versions of myself. And as you can see, it also saw all versions of my haircut. Like the Camp Vesper says, it gave me the strength to lead and the faith to follow. And I continued going till about 2016, when I was supposed to be working on a project. I wasn't and was goofing off, and I put Camp Woolsey into the search bar. And from this online archive, I got dozens of hits back. I was soon sorting through all this information about a place I deeply loved, and I was hooked. I soon realized that my camp life had been one that been lived hundreds of times over, and it was part of a much larger Girl Guide story. After graduating, I became involved with co-authoring a book about the camp's past with local author Julie Cote. However, in the spring of 2017, the announcement came from Girl Guides of Canada Ontario Council that they plan to sell and close off all the camps. This made me cry, but it shifted my goal. I had a fear that the Woolsey community would fade as we were displaced from a camp. So the Camp Woolsey Facebook page was created around this time to try and connect this community to its past. In the fall of 2017, I remember that the Bytown Museum had a community gallery that allowed different community groups to come in and make displays. We soon came into a partnership, and Camp Woolsey Memories Ottawa Girl Guide Camp opened for 4 months at the Bytown at the beginning of 2019. It then moved to Penny's Point for another 5 months. The focus of the exhibit is to evoke memories and a sense of nostalgia on the viewer, with a timeline starting in 1937 and ending in 2017. Each decade is marked with memorabilia surrounding it. The Girl Guide movement started in England in 1909 as a youth character building experience along the Boy Scouts, guiding which reached Canada in 1910, with the first units forming in St. Catharines, Ontario. Less than 2 years later, guiding would reach Ottawa with the first meeting at St. Luke's Anglican Church. By 1913, 7 units had formed, with the first local association of Girl Guides was created. With the foundation of guiding set, the question soon turned to camping and how to get women and girls outside. Luckily, there was a family also concerned with this question, and the Woolseys were willing to help the Girl Guides achieve the camping dream. Major Edward Charles Woolsey was born in Quebec in 1874 and moved to Ottawa when he was 9. Major Woolsey was a lifelong member of the Rideau Canoe Club and took part in other team sports like hockey, badminton, and rugby. During the Second South African War, he served with the Canadian military, and it was probably these elements of a military background, a love of canoeing and team sports that led to his involvement with the Ottawa Scouting community in 1910. Another important life event happened to Charles that year. He married his wife, Mary Townley Kinley, a direct descendant of Ham and Penny. Both took on a very active role in guiding and scouting, with Mary acting as a local association president for the 1930s and in the 1940s. Before the Girl Guides had a camp of their own, the Woolseys would allow units to camp at their cottage that was along the Quebec side of the Ottawa River. Decades later, the first Ottawa Trefoil Guild petitioned the Canadian government to rename that part of the river after them. The Woolsey Narrows was in recognition of the family's generosity, and it was this area surrounding the cottage that guides would start their search for the camp. With the assistance of the Woolseys, soon an old farm was found and fundraising would begin. Now, finding funds for a camp was not an easy task during the Great Depression. And although the Girl Guide cookies had become the official fundraiser in 1929, the Girl Guides of Ottawa used different techniques to try and raise money for the camp. One notable campaign was a donut drive held in the late 1930s. The drive was officially opened by Ottawa Mayor Stanley Lewis, who then personally purchased a dozen donuts. Letter writing campaigns was also another common fundraising technique. These campaigns were often run by Mary Woolsey and other members of the local association. Letters were sent across Ottawa asking individuals and companies for help. And I'm always struck with how personal these letters are. One letter in particular stands out and is on this slide. It's addressed to Miss Rogers on the 1st of May, 1939, and reads as follows. Enclosed, please find a check for $5 for the Girl Guides. Sorry, it is not more. This is something that hits me when I think of fundraising done for the camp. It's this letter that shows while the Girl Guides were working hard for the camp, their community was working equally hard supporting them. At the same time, the Girl Guides were fundraising. The search for the location of the future camp was underway. It was in March 1933 when Mary first mentioned that there was properties for sale in Crown Point across the river from her cottage. Over the next few years, Major Woolsey and other members of the association would visit different properties to see if any were suitable. It was soon decided that a 97-acre farm would make the ideal camp. Although unclear, there seems to have been some difficulties of the sale as it took a couple years to fully complete. The location for Camp Woolsey has a long history and connection with the Penny's family of Penny's Point. In 1846, the property was granted to Ham Penny, the original owner of Penny's Point, who then sold the land in 1853. In the generations that followed, the property passed through several owners before becoming the home of the Walters family in 1889. However, due to the Great Depression, the family lost the farms and the creditors sold it to the Girl Guides in 1938. The same year, Major Woolsey was awarded the Silver Wolf Dedication in Scouting, which is the highest honor a member can receive. And in 1958, he would become the honorary vice president of the Boy Scouts of Canada. The official dedication of Camp Woolsey took place on Thursday, July 6th. Although to the long process of the sale, the Girl Guides had been kindly allowed to camp on the site since 1937. This dedication acted as a celebration of the camp being fully owned and completely paid for by the Girl Guides. It was named after Mary and her husband in honor of all their work. And like any good Woolsey event, the ceremony took place in the rain. Now, buying the camp was one thing, but getting it ready to use was another. When the Girl Guides bought it, there was two main concerns they had to address. One was reforestation, as the property spent many years as a farm, and the Canadian government actually donated about 1,000 trees for the guides to replant on the property. The other one was a camp hospital. And during the fundraising process, Anna Penny, granddaughter of Hammett Penny, and cousin of Mary, donated $500 and asked for $150 of it be put to renovating the old cottage. The cottage was renamed in her honor, and in the years that followed, Anna would continue to make visits to the camp, help care for the cottage, and most importantly, spend time with the Girl Guides. The next summer was marked by the visit of British Princess Alice. Princess Alice made her first 2-hour visit in the summer of 1940. And this was not only the first time Princess Alice met with the Ottawa Girl Guides, but it was the first time a member of the royal family had visited a Canadian camp. After a tour, a reception was held at the dining hall when Princess Alice inspected all guides in the full uniform. Before she left, she made time to sit with the campers, talk with them, and tell them how important their work was to the war effort. Before she left, she allowed campers to take photos of her, and she took photos of them. Princess Alice would return to camp for another visit a couple weeks later, and throughout the war, she would continue to spend time with the Girl Guides of Ottawa. At the same time of Princess Alice's visit, Canada had been involved in the Second World War for just over a year. As the conflict continued, both guiding and the funds would be pulled away to help with the war effort. However, some Girl Guides who were still so desperate to spend time in the summer home would hitchhike their way to camp one Thanksgiving weekend. They spent the weekend together in Penny's cottage, goofing off, laughing, and spending time with their best friends. During the weekend, they made sure to check on Ambrose the Mouse, a little mascot camp had adopted. He lived in the soda biscuit box in the cottage, and they made sure to send a full report to the Ottawa Citizen newspaper in which the guides had a section in. They just needed to let the rest of their friends know he was doing okay. In the Second World War, in 1943, despite reports that summer camp would not take place at Woolsey, the camp opened for a 2-week period with a small and limited staff team. This would be the last time camp would take place on the site until after the war. And during this time, the camp saw limited use and as a result became run down. Now, the Girl Guides in the Second War is truly a fascinating topic, and I highly recommend the book, How the Girl Guides Won the War, for those who would want to learn more. One of the first areas to be rebuilt after the war was the camp's chapel. The previous one, called Green Cathedral, had become overgrown, and a new location by the camp's beach was chosen. The campus built it as part of the summer camp programming in 1948, and at this time, most Woolsey campers were connected to some form of Christianity. A big draw for Canadian families enrolling their daughters into the movement was its connection to English culture. For about a 10-year period, different ministers from the local town of Fisher Harbor would drive in to lead Sunday Mass. If possible, these services would take place on visitor days so the campus families could join in as well. An altar was added in 1952 and is dedicated to the memory of Guide Kathy Douglas. Kathy was a Lansdowne Guide, and during the Second World War, she spent 1 year overseas working with the Red Cross. She passed away suddenly in the fall of 1951. Originally, the dedication of the altar was to take place on a Sunday early in July, but due to the disease, a quarantine was placed on the camp and camp was canceled that year, which is something we can all now kind of relate to, that disappointment. The event was postponed to the end of the summer. Over the years, many ghost stories had been given to the space, with some guides claiming the altar is actually Kathy's tomb, but no bodies are buried there. Now, the 1950s also saw the birth of a tradition of camp names, and this is a tradition that stayed with the camp until the end. In 1950s Camp magazine, shown on this slide, shows that camp staff would take the names from different Indigenous words that they felt applied to them. Summer camps in Ontario have a long history of culturally appropriate aspects of Indigenous culture, and this is present in Woolsey's history. In modern times, camp names are still important, with them now focusing on animals, food, or something else that is meaningful for that staff member. The next decade saw a great period of growth for the camp, and this was largely due to the involvement of different community groups. In 1953, the West Ottawa Alliance adopted camp as the year-long mission and helped camp undertake projects like bringing electricity to the site, building cabins for the youngest members of the movement, the Brownies, and in the following year, the club made a large enough donation to help camper fees be cut in half. They also spent many weekends re-roofing pennies and adding a new water pump to the dining hall. The West Ottawa Alliance would continue making repairs and improvements to the camp until a change of leadership ended the partnership in 1958. Now, the 1950s also saw a special pine tree used by the guides and Brownies as a play fort and picnic spot. The Brownie tree became so well known and loved around camp, it was simply referred to as the tree, and everyone would know what you were talking about. What made this tree so special was the fact the lower branches touched the ground, and when you pulled it away, there was a spot big enough for adults to stand in. And sources say that one would stay dry in a rainstorm if they were standing under the tree. One year after the camping season had closed, both the Brownie tree and the site of trefoil was almost destroyed by a fire. As the story goes, a couple of girl guides who had been visiting family over at McLaren's Landing had wanted to make sure if the tree was okay and came onto camp to check on it. When they arrived at the tree, they pulled back the branches and they discovered someone lit a fire and then ran away. One of the guides heroically put out the fire while the other ran to go get help. These guides were later recognized by a letter. However, I personally have my doubts because it seems a bit too convenient the guides would show up as soon as someone lit a fire and ran away, and they just happened to be there to put them out. At some point, the lower branches of the tree were trimmed to make room for a storage shed on trefoil. And this decision caused some controversy as it took away the enclosed space that campers loved and once played in. The 1960s brought on new projects for the Girl Guides. 2 campsites, Hidden and Field, were cleared to give the girls more tenting options, and fundraising began for a boathouse. The building was completed in 1967 and given the name Centennial in honor of Canada's 100th birthday. The upper level of the boathouse had one of only 2 fireplaces at camp, both built out of stones collected from the beach by the campers. The 1960s, 70s, and 80s saw the buildings of sites like Trefoil, Tamarack, Ray Lodge, Council Fire, and Gibbs. The Woolsey logo was created by Dorothy Gray, a mother of former camp director, in 1975. After Ray Lodge was completed, a tuck shop was added to the basement, and camp began selling merchandise like shirts, mugs, flags, and badges. And these are some of my favorite items around camp, not because I grew up with them, but because I had just missed them. These items were what I remember my leaders and the older campers having. These were my camp heroes, and I idolized them. Another one of my favorite childhood memories from camp has to do with Rosie the raccoon. Rosie adopted camp in the summer of 2000, and her name came out of a name the mascot contest held by the Ottawa area. Girl Guides could send in suggested names or join us the type of activities done at camp. Rosie's current design was created by master puppeteer Mike Fisher, who also created work for the Jim Henson Company, Rainbow Connections. Rosie's design has undergone some small changes over the years, but she still takes a big role in birthdays, campfires, and activities, even in the last few summers. Now, for those who worked at camp, they know about Mickey. Mickey kept time at camp for the last few decades, and those who work at camp know that camp runs on Mickey time and that Mickey is law. Mickey was bought one summer by camp staff who collected popsicle sticks that the campers ate to collect points in a contest. Each stick had up to 3 points on it, and they had to collect 1,000 to buy Mickey. Mickey is currently safely living with a past Woolsey staff member, keeping the law at her home. Now, I owe a big part of what made Woolsey so special to the hard work of Vicki Thumper Wallace and Becky Dragon Vincent, who was the camp directors from 2003 to 2010. Together, they helped raise up and lift up thousands of Ottawa girls and women, and we owe a lot of what made Woolsey so special to them. From the bottom of my heart, I deeply, deeply thank them. Now, in the summer of 2008, the horror movie The Watch was filmed partly at camp and came out. It was filmed using the camp's hospital and a few of the forests around the property. The movie didn't do too well, but last summer, a past staff tracked it down on eBay and reports back that it really wasn't a smashing hit. Now, an 80-year history can't be fully told in 30 minutes, and there is so much more I wish I had time to go over. For this talk, I really tried to include stories that spanned many decades and not just my Woolsey. So feel free to keep sharing memories in the chat, and you can always learn more on our Facebook page. I know that Julie Cote is still working towards editing a book on the history of camp, and hopefully that can come out within the next few years. So in the spring of 2017, the announcement came that the Ontario Council of Girl Guides of Canada planned to close and sell off all the camps. Heartbroken, the Woolsey community still showed up to camp, and in 2019 enjoyed a mostly sold out summer. We all lost a lot through COVID, but what has been lost is the Woolsey spirit. When Woolsey's last summer had been canceled due to the virus, the Woolsey community still showed up with the same love and support that carried them throughout the last 80 years. Past staff hosted a bi-weekly campfire, giving us all a little joy when we needed it. And I truly believe as long as there's Girl Guides in Ottawa, we will find a way to come together, camp, and have fun. From the bottom of my heart, I thank Camp Woolsey. I thank you for the friends you gave me, the adventures and the lessons, the mistakes, the long night, and the too much coffee I drank. It really shaped me for who I am, and I know it shaped thousands of other women. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Wow, well, thank you, Emma. This is always the point where I feel bad because you can't hear people applauding for what was really a good presentation. However, I do urge you and everyone else, before we get to questions, to check the chat. Just as you said, there's so many people, Emma, that are sharing their thoughts and their memories of this. You've really touched a lot of people tonight. So even though you can't hear applause, you can definitely read it in the chat. I hope you can save the chat. We've got a couple of questions for you, Emma, if you want to answer them. Although actually you've kind of answered our questions tonight, but we'll give this one. I wanted to mention one here because we got one question from a Beverly Elliott, and I wanted to bring her up because she said she had attended with the 47th Girl Guide Company. And I'm going to give away the years, Beverly, so people can get their calculators out, from 1958 to 1964. So obviously her memories go back. But she did ask, has any effort been made to salvage the property and rent the cabins?
So what I know, one of the things that Girl Guides of Canada tried to do is they sent staff in to collect any historical things of value for their archives. So Girl Guides of Canada has their own archives, and they took and digitized as much as possible to save it. And I know they tried to use they also tried to take materials like crafting materials and redisperse this among the guiding community. For the property, I know there was a couple different campaigns to try and rework something, but unfortunately, there was no kind of business plan the Girl Guides could align themselves with that would have the camp continue past 15 years. I know you can contact Girl Guides of Canada and they would be able to better answer that question.
Okay, and someone has posted in the chat a link to, the property is up for sale, but hopefully if no one sells it, and it might be time for the Girl Guides to be able to raise some funds, keep your fingers crossed. One other question, I guess you kind of answered this one as well, but I'll ask it because someone wanted to know something about at the time, how was the rent paid? Although I guess they owned the property, and how was the camp funded?
So in the early years, one of the big things we did while researching for the camp is I went back to the Ottawa Citizen, which was like fantastic. So what the Ottawa Citizen used to have is they used to have a weekly column for Girl Guides, and they would basically write down what was happening, what units got badges that week, what crafts they did. They wrote down everything. And what they were really good at is saying thank you. And they made sure to always thank different companies and people wherever they donated things for the camp. So in the camp's earliest years, you definitely see a lot of money being given to the camp, but you also see items. So some newspaper archives has people are just about like the Girl Guides thanking so-and-so electricity company for a fridge they were gifted. One time someone gifted a basket of pots and pans to the kitchen. And yeah, it's just like people gave what they could, and it's so cool because we really see Woolsey being a community built camp. Kind of later in the 40s and 50s, one kind of document suggested that each kind of area in Ottawa, so like Barrhaven or Canada or downtown, would each kind of adopt a site at Woolsey, and they would pay for like the care that went into it. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
So like you definitely had like the Girl Guides wanted it, and the community and them stepped up for it.
Yeah. I did notice there you had one photograph of a letter from the Chauncey Bang, so $5.
Yeah.
Chauncey Bang was actually one of Ottawa's more wealthy people. He was a coal merchant. He more than $5, but I guess it's the thought that counts. Another question here just came in. Was the camp operational during the winter season?
Yep. So Woolsey has always kind of been, at least in the time I've been there, winterized. So what happens is there's a number of tenting sites, but also about 4 or 5 sites that are winterized. So it's definitely used all year. More so in the spring and fall, just because more sites are open, and then in the winter you have those buildings almost always kind of booked up.
Okay, and here's one that's not a question, but I'm hoping you can add more to this. I got a chat here from Julie Cote.
Yeah, Jackie Jack.
Here, let me read it. Hello, if anyone's interested in looking at the book Emma and I have been working on, here is the link. Do you want to give us a little bit more on the book that you're working on?
Yeah, so the book, we touched about it more from the beginning. So what we have is it's a lot of photos and stories and kind of the history. And it's kind of been a passion project for myself and Julie for the last number of years. And kind of, I think me and Julie are both creative people, and we tend to take on a lot of projects at once. So sometimes those get in the way. But it's definitely something we are hoping to have finished within the next couple of years. Julie has one of those big drafts of it almost completed. So it's just on her website. And if you want to kind of take a look what we have, like, I highly recommend it. She's done a great job formatting it. And the pictures are just amazing. Like, one of the things Woolsey is so lucky to have is just the number of pictures from the 40s and 50s.
Okay, and if you're looking for an extra help, I'm sure there's a lot of HSO members and volunteers that would be happy to help out with that. Yeah, that's what we do. So we'd be happy to help you with that.
We would love that.
I hope I didn't say. I'm certainly welcome to give it a go there, even though I'm a Boy Scout, a Sea Scout I was.
Hey, as long as you're involved in a movement, that's the main thing.
Yeah. So that's it for questions. Unless you've got anything else to add, I think I'll just end off here by, I got a few announcements, but as far as your presentation, I urge everyone to go and check out the chat. There's just so many people that are telling stories. In fact, I just want to hear quickly about someone who attended in the 50s and actually met Mary Woolsey when she came by to visit the guides. And I see someone saying, is Doe Lake still open? That's the one I remember from Muskoka. That's the one I was talking to you earlier about, that I believe had closed.
Doe Lake is still open. It's set to close in 2021 or 2022 after the last big camp that they have scheduled there. But of course, for COVID, like, everything's up in the air.
Yeah, I know there's a big fundraiser in Muskoka where I grew up as a kid to try and save Doe Lake for the same reason. People have so many great memories of it. Lynn, you got anything you want to add?
Well, I just wanted to mention, Emma, when I download the recording, there is a separate file of all the chat questions and comments. So I will send that to you. And you can see a full transcript of everything that people have been saying throughout this lecture. It's quite fun.
Oh, I'm so glad. I love Zoom for that option, just to the chat. It's really amazing.
And informative in this case too. So I'm glad you did that, Lynn. Thanks a lot. If there's no other questions, Em, I want to thank you for a short but really passionate talk tonight. It's rare we get one from someone who's just so loves what they're talking about, and I wish you well with the book that's coming up. And just to wrap things up here, thanks to Ben for getting us another speaker. Our next speaker wasn't scheduled to March 31st, but we will be having another guest speaker on Wednesday, February 10th, and that's Wendy Alexis. And she'll be talking about the day my students met Mandela. And it's about Nelson Mandela's remarkable 1998 visit to Ottawa. So I hope you'll join us again by Zoom. And other than that, thank you, everyone. Still more comments coming in. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And we will see you again on February 10th.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay. May I just see the last question that came is, when will registration for these other talks be available? You can find the link to registration on the Historical Society of Ottawa website under the events section.
Yeah, although our most recent one, it's not posted yet. Has it been like the one for February? We'll have to post that one.
Yeah.
Yet, because the one that's up for posting or that you can register now is. But we'll get that one up, I'm sure, before February 10th. Otherwise, we'll have no one